Congressman McGovern was elected into the House of Representatives in 1996, appointed to the House Rules Committee in 2001. He was named ranking member in 2018 and became chair in 2019. Congressman McGovern, I am honored for you to be here today. We are elated to have you in the space.
I'm thrilled to be here at Pete's Coffee with you. And,
we are.
We
have a great cup of coffee, and we're just going to chat it up. So, tell us what you're doing.
Well, I ran for Congress and wanted to help people, and so every day when I show up to work, I discuss with my staff what we're going to do today to help people I represent, people throughout the country, people throughout the world. Serving in Congress is a great privilege. And it needs to be about more than my personal ambition. It needs to be about making a difference. And so I focus on issues that I feel strongly about. Human rights. I co-chair the Human Rights Commission. Food, hunger, nutrition, and security. On the Agriculture Committee, I'm the ranking member of the Nutrition Subcommittee. And in the Rules Committee, which is the traffic cop of Congress. Everything comes through us. And I get to put my fingerprints on a lot of different things. And some days I'm elated that we've done good stuff. Some days I'm frustrated that we haven't done much of anything. But that's what motivates me. That's why I ran for Congress.
You know, we met at a event for the first time,
right.
The Capitol Area Food Bank event, back last year in October. And I motivated you, you motivated me in a lot of ways. And we discussed, I've discussed about the survivorship of domestic violence. And you were very adamant, you spoke very loudly about congressional leadership taking a more personal approach to people in the communities and listening to the people, actually listening to the people that you service every single day. Tell us how it played out for you on that unfortunate day, January 6th, when the Capitol Hill attacks came at you, blindsided everyone. How did you feel that particular moment, sir? And how do you respond today into those acts of violence that change your life forever?
Well, first of all, I come from Massachusetts, and we used to have a Speaker of the House named Tip O'Neill. He used to say all politics is local. I believe that's true, but it's also all politics is personal too. And it's important that we listen to people and not just assume what people are thinking. And so that's why I approach things. But with regard to January 6th, that's a day that will be etched in my memory forever. That was the day we were needing to certify the electoral college results of the presidential election, in which Joe Biden won by a very comfortable margin. And there were objections by some of my colleagues on the Republican side to the election results. And so they made the objections. We had to debate those objections and then vote on them. And so it was the first objection on Arizona. And the Senate went back to the Senate, and the House stays in the House chamber, where we were both meeting together. And we debate and then we vote. And Speaker Pelosi was in the chair. And a few minutes into the proceedings, she motioned to me to come over to her, and I went over, and she says, "Do you mind sitting here for a few minutes? I'm being called aside. I'll be right back." And I think she thought she'd come right back because she left her phone there. And so I took over, chairing the proceedings. Little did I know, little did she expect it, when she left, they whisked her away to a safe location, someplace off the Capitol campus. And we didn't have TV sets on because we're in session. So we're going through the proceedings, and I kept on getting texts from my daughter, and I was trying to look at them without looking like I was looking at my phone. The texts were like, "Where are you? What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm in the Capitol. I'm in the chair." "I know. Why are you there?" "It's because I'm stepping in for Pelosi for a minute stop texting me. I don't want to look like I'm texting on TV. And she said, you should leave. And I didn't know what was happening. And then I heard screaming, loud voices from outside the chamber. But I assumed that maybe it was a couple of people that just were running loose in the Capitol because it's a cavernous building. And if you scream, it echoes. And so I called the proceedings to a halt briefly. And then when I didn't hear any more voices, we went back into session. And then about a minute or two later, I had to bring us to an end because somebody had broken a pane of glass in one of the doors leading into the chamber. And then the Capitol Police told me, you need to evacuate. It's no longer safe for you to be here. All of a sudden, security increased. People with guns drawn at the doors that you can see everywhere. And I began to give instructions on how people should evacuate and what our escape route was going to be. So I did that until everybody was gone, and then I left. And when you leave the House floor, you walk into a place called the Speaker's Lobby. It was separated by two sets of doors that are glass from the mid-level up. And when I walked out, there was still kind of a bottleneck, if you will, of people kind of backed up. Everybody was trying to get out one narrow exit. And I walked out, and about maybe 20 feet in front of me, I could see this mob. I mean, like a whole bunch of people slamming their fists on this glass window. Capitol Police inside with their guns drawn, putting chairs against the doors. And I looked at these people banging on the window, and if you had asked me to describe what hate looks like, he was looking into the eyes of those people. And I was angry because, a big part of my life has been spent in the Capitol. I mean, I was an intern, I was a staffer, I was a member of Congress. I met my wife, who was working for another member of Congress there. I still get emotional when I see the Capitol building when I walk to work because it symbolizes what I want this country to be, the ideals of this country. And to see these people destroying it, I was angry and I was stunned. How did this happen? I mean, the last time a group like that came into the Capitol was during the War of 1812. How did this happen? And I just, and I said to the person next to me, I said, I don't think they're here to issue a political statement. They're here to hurt us. I mean, we got to get the hell out of here. And anyway, finally we were able to get out, move around the corner, and as I turned the corner, that's when the police shot this woman who was trying to get through the door, and I didn't really know that for sure until much later in the day. But then we went to a safe location and we waited until we could go back on the House floor, which was several hours later, and then we continued the proceedings. And here's the deal. I was here on September 11th when we were attacked, and Democrats and Republicans in the aftermath of that attack joined together on the steps of the Capitol and saying, God bless America. I thought something like that was going to happen, some unifying moment. I was stunned that it didn't. People continue to pursue this big lie that somehow the election didn't happen. And we had debates and votes. And then in the days afterwards, I had colleagues say it didn't happen, or that the people who attacked us were patriots. I mean, staff members were forced to hide under their desks, fearing for their life. 140 Capitol Police were wounded. Some died. One officer lost eyesight in one eye. I remember going to get a coffee a few days later in the cafeteria in the basement of the Capitol, and a woman who worked there asked me whether I thought it was safe for her to show up to work. I mean, so a lot of people were traumatized by this in a way that I think if you weren't there, a lot of people can't appreciate that.
Congressman, it's almost like what you experienced during the riot period is what domestic violence survivors have been echoing from centuries ago. It's what we experience. It's what has brought us to be the advocates we are today. I can't imagine what you and your colleagues felt. I can only imagine that the trauma it brought to your lives is real because as a survivor, now to another survivor of violence, you know it firsthand. And there's no better advocate in this space to know how domestic violence feels to an individual and how dehumanizing it is to an individual to be attacked and for people to misbehave and just force themselves into this barrage of violence against you. It's unacceptable.
Well, look, I mean, for me, I came close to this, a physical encounter with this mob, but I did not. I was able to get out. I look at the videotapes of those Capitol police officers being stabbed with American flags, and then I think of the staff that locked themselves in their offices in the Capitol as this mob was banging and screaming on the door outside, and what they went through. I mean, and everybody deals with things differently. I have this kind of, I guess it's probably unhealthy approach to deal with things that are unpleasant by putting it in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And at some point, and every once in a while I get triggered.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a guy in the supermarket in Massachusetts say to me, "Oh, I was really sorry what happened. What a tragedy what happened on January 6th." And I thought he was being sympathetic until he told me that he has a video which shows the event unfolding that we saw on TV. He's compared it with real, actual footage of the Capitol. He was telling me there were two different places. And I explained to him I was there. He said, "No, you got to see the video." I said, "But I was there." He said, "No, you don't understand." And I uncharacteristically said a few things that probably weren't very kind and not becoming a member of Congress. But the bottom line is, it's like, that's how, every once in a while, things that you try to manage, when probably it's healthier to get it out and talk about it and understand. I still get very emotional when I talk about my daughter, who is, called me several times. She's worried that something happened to her dad. I mean, like, why did this happen? How does anybody think this was good? And, for survivors of domestic violence, and I, over my, many years in Congress, have worked with many. I'm always amazed at how so many have been able to deal with it, and with all the other pressures in their life, and with many living under constant fear, even after they've been attacked, because the person who did the attack is still around. But how how to move on and be able to get on with your life, it's really hard. And I'm always in awe of the courage that people have in talking about this stuff, because when you talk about it, you relive it. I mean, no matter how many years later, I know you, I'm sure, I mean, know this better than anybody. I mean, it's like, it could have happened 10, 20, 30 years ago, but it doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away. The trauma is always stuck in your mind. To relive something that tragic is very, people who have not experienced this kind of trauma don't understand what you go through day to day. So, like, day to day, this is a constant, you get constantly triggered by the general things that other people take for granted and can cope with, you cannot.
Right.
And there's so many viewing this podcast today that have gone through what you've gone through, sir. I apologize for those people who thought that they had the right to do that to any member of Congress. It's just beyond me. But there are people driven to do mean things.
Yeah, there are. I mean, I had the protection of Capitol Police around me, right? I mean, which is some of those staffers that I talked about did not. I mean, they were alone in the office as these people were banging on their doors. Those Capitol Police who were beaten and called racist names, and I mean, you just wonder, like, what kind of person would do that to another? I mean, I and that's the thing that I mean, the two things that I continue to be really bothered by is the fact that somebody thought that what happened that day was acceptable. And then the fact that I served with people who, defend those who attacked the Capitol, who did violence against the people who worked there. I don't understand that. I think they see some political gain amongst a certain constituency in defending that horrific behavior, but it's sick that anybody would think that violence like that was okay. Or, I mean, and that's before we even get to the issue of nullifying an election.
That's right.
I mean, in a democracy, but it's this, and look, we have to figure out a way in this country to get back to a point where one is we all would agree, no matter what our politics, no matter where we come from, that violence like that is unacceptable. We have to try to find a way to, and maybe it's too late for the people who did this and those who support them, but at least for generations that are upcoming, to teach people respect and to teach people that everybody is important. And in the case of a lot of people who've been impacted by domestic violence, to believe those who tell their stories. And I gave you, I mean, for me, I mean, no one touched me because it got to me. But as I mentioned to you, I was triggered when somebody just, was trying to disbelieve what what you were saying. I mean, I can only imagine what it's like as somebody who had been, personally victimized by violence, by the domestic abuser, to then have somebody say, "I don't believe you." I mean, I don't believe you, because that's like having this thing happen again and again and again, but even worse because it makes you feel
there's always a stigma,
right? Or that's how that. I mean, it's such a shows such a lack of respect. But but as you know, I mean, we just have to do a better job, and I don't know what the magic formula is, and and how we deal with all these issues as effectively as you and I would like to see happen. But God, we got to start with we have to bring back some decency to our public discourse and to our politics, and just to our daily interactions, because we've seen a lot of indecency in recent years, and and I think it's bad. So we gotta figure this out.
Well, one of the bright spots I know for you has been your tireless work that you've been advocating for a White House summit to take place.
You've been very helpful. So thank you for lending your voice and your influence and your gravitas. It's great. Thank you. I mean,
well, one thing I do, I have a loud voice when it comes to advocating for people in need. Always have and always will. But I want you to talk a little bit about your efforts in bringing the second of this kind White House Summit
So look, we live in a country that is wealthy, the richest country in the history of the world. And as we're here having our peach coffee and I'm having my Kind bar, I mean there are close to 40 million of our own citizens who have no idea where the next meal is going to come from, and there's just something wrong with that. Food ought to be a fundamental human right for everyone, and not just food, but good food, nutritious food. And our safety net systems are not adequate. They do some good work, but they're flawed. And we don't really have a plan to end hunger in this country. I mean, we have programs to manage it, but we don't have a plan to end it. And I've seen a lot of children in my congressional district in Massachusetts who are hungry. If you ever see a child that is hungry, it breaks your heart. See anybody hungry, it's heartbreaking, but a child in particular. And 54 years ago, the White House did a conference on this topic, and some good things happened. WIC, the Women's Infants and Children's Program, can't talk about kind of the modern day Food Stamp Now SNAP program was, grew out of that. An appreciation that we need to focus on school meals. And so a lot of good things happened. If I have a critique of that conference 54 years ago, it would be that too many people that were there who participated looked like me. And we really need, and this is why it was so helpful for you to be at our launch of this effort, was because we need people with lived experiences who are working in the community and tell us what the realities are. I think I know a lot of stuff, but I learn things new every day. And so we need people with lived experience. We need people who are thinking out of the box with innovative ideas, because we have to break down some of the walls in the systems that exist if we're going to solve this problem. I mean, this is not just a problem for USDA and SNAP. I mean, housing is a part of this. Our medical systems, our hospitals need to be a part of this. You get a prescription for an expensive drug, but why can't you get a prescription for food? Our school systems need to be a bigger part of this. We need to work with our faith-based organizations and people. I mean, anybody who has any role in this. We did a hearing in the Rules Committee, which I chair, on hunger on college campuses. People think because you're going to college, you're not hungry. I mean, and by the way, it's not just the community colleges. We got people who are hungry at MIT, right? I mean, so it's like, this is a problem. We should be talking about it. And there are some good ideas out there to try to address it. And, we need to bring our farmers into this. I mean, this has to be a holistic, all of government, public-private partnership, and let's just do it. And so we've been pushed it during the Obama years, and unfortunately wasn't able to get it off the ground, although they did some positive things in this area. During the Trump years, I was like, forget about it. But now Biden came back and we were pushing him. And a few weeks ago, we passed this big appropriations bill, which I put some money in there to underwrite the conference. So there's no excuse not to do it. And we're meeting with all the cabinet officials, and my expectation is that hopefully in the next few weeks they'll make an announcement. But then that's when the work begins, right? Because we've all been to conferences, and nothing worse than going to a conference where everybody talks and then I'll see you at the next conference, right? So we need a plan, we need benchmarks, we need innovative ideas, and this could be transformational. But so we're almost there, and again, we also need to make sure that we're listening to people with lived experiences. I was in San Francisco and at a farmers market, handing out bags of fresh produce to people who were coming up, and this woman came up to me and she said, "Too much in the bag." And she picked out a couple of things, and I said, "Well, you can always store this. I mean, you can use it again." And she said, "Yeah, I don't have a place to cook it or to refrigerate it." And I said, "Are you living in you have housing?" She said, "No, I do have housing. I'm not homeless, but a lot of apartments here don't have kitchens." And then I've been back in my home city of Worcester, in Massachusetts, and I'm learning from people that, that a lot of people have apartments that don't have kitchens, and so they're like, so this is, giving me a, raw potatoes is fine. Although my grandfather used to eat raw potatoes with salt on it, but I mean, not everybody does, right?
Okay.
But I mean, giving me something that I have to prepare or cook when I don't have the ability to do it, it's like the food will go bad. So, we need to understand that we have to do a better job of making sure prepared foods are available for people. So one glove doesn't fit all. We're learning about the great diversity of this country, which is wonderful, right? I mean, I love, all the different cultures, but with that, it needs to come an appreciation of making sure we have culturally appropriate foods for people. Because otherwise, if I'm giving you food that you're not familiar with, you're not going to eat it. So what the hell good is that, right?
That's right.
We were in New York City. I met with this group called the Met Council. They service primarily low-income Jewish families in the metropolitan New York City area. And there's a great demand for halal and kosher foods, but it's tough to get. So these guys saying, giving me a food box from USDA that is not halal or kosher, these people won't eat it. So, want to help me figure out how we get over that. So that's what I mean. I'm giving you kind of small little tidbits about some of the things I've learned, but we need to address all these issues, on hunger on college campuses. When I went to college, my mother said, you got to get the meal plan. Otherwise you won't eat. Right. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? I went to school and I was like, life takes over. Well, I sleep late, so I skip breakfast, I maybe have lunch, or maybe I went home with some friends for dinner. But I paid for these meals. Why can't we make it so that the meals that people do not use as part of their school meal package go back into the system and be allocated to people who don't have that, right? These are little things, and then there needs to be systematic changes. The cost of living isn't the same everywhere. That's right. And the cost of living in DC is a lot higher than it is in Mitchell, South Dakota. But why are the benefits all the same? So, SNAP, which is already inadequate, could buy you probably a little bit more in Mitchell, South Dakota than it can in DC or Manhattan or San Francisco. I mean, so let's talk about everything. Food is medicine. That's right. I mean, my grandmother used to say, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. That's right. It used to annoy me. I wish she was still alive. I could say you were right.
She was absolutely right.
But the point of the matter is we have an opportunity, if this conference happens, to weave all of this together. To understand that every department has a role in this. I met with Secretary of Transportation Buttigieg. He was like, well, you're doing 700. Where does transportation fit into this? This is to get people to places, to get food to people. That's a big problem. Refrigerated trucks, food trucks, to get meals to people. Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm. Where does energy fit in this? Utility bills cut into people's food budgets. So you are very relevant to this. The Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland. I mean, they oversee a lot of the tribal communities. If you want to see people who are locked out of so much of kind of our emergency food system, talk to our tribal communities. So anyway, we're trying to piece this all together. It's going to happen, and I look forward to letting you know so that we get your input, but also we want you at the conference.
Yes, I will definitely be there with those. We saw history being made by the appointment of Supreme Court Judge
Jackson. Yeah, unbelievable.
I'm touched. I can't. Words cannot express what I felt seeing history play out like this, of a well-educated, well-deserved position like and an honor like this just be overcast by such stigma and whatever you want to call this. I don't even know what you would categorize this as, but she sat there with such grace. She was well controlled in the space, much better than I probably would have ever considered in my life, because I would have popped out probably with a few choice words. But that confirmation hearing was really for the justice, no doubt. But I saw a video that you had made, speaking some words of encouragement to to Supreme Court Judge Jackson, and I sat there not only as a spectator of the confirmation hearings, but I also sat there as a Black woman, a professional Black woman, an educated Black woman, and thought to myself, how can they do this to her? How can they do this to her and call themselves congressional leadership?
Look, I share your emotions about her nomination. My wife would tell you. My wife always says I'm emotionally dead inside. Well, not dead, but I really do. I really do. And but I was like, wow. And she's perhaps the most qualified nominee in my lifetime that has been put forward. And she handled herself with such dignity and composure. A reporter asked me, what I thought. I said, if I had to be questioned by Lindsey Graham, Josh Hawley, and Ted Cruz the way she was, I would not have been able to keep my composure. I would have told them to go straight to hell, and that would have been the end of my nomination.
Right.
All right. So that's the end of But the more I watched her demonstrating grace under fire, the more I felt strongly that she's the right person, and she's going to break the glass ceiling. It's going to be history making when she gets approved by the Senate. But I also thought that these senators, some of them humiliated themselves and humiliated the institution. I mean, look, we still have a racism problem with this country, and a sexism problem too.
Yes.
I mean, she's a Black woman, so, and these people, when they question her, wouldn't even let her respond to things. They would interrupt her. I don't remember them doing that to Judge Kavanaugh. But was it because she's Black or she's a woman that they thought it was okay to do that?
Which one is it?
Right. And then, the content of the questions and the, fake outrage, and it racism is not just a problem, in remote parts of our culture. It's alive and well in the United States Senate, in the United States House of Representatives. You see it every day. I mean, the former president of this country, who is making wacky statements that somehow white people are being discriminated against when it comes to COVID vaccination. I mean, this is nuts. It's nuts. Bottom line is that we need to understand that, and we need to admit what the realities are. Not to say that everything is bad. It's to say, this is where we need to improve. I mean, we have now governor of Florida doesn't want kids to learn about slavery because white kids may feel uncomfortable. Well, that's a part of our history. I mean, you know what? I'm not blaming the little Johnny who's 12 years old, but he needs to understand what our history has been. It's not all perfect. There's a lot of things that we should be ashamed of. There's a lot of things we should rejoice in. But I was a history major in college. I wish more people had a sense of history, but I do know this. If you don't know your history, you repeat the same mistakes over and over again. So, this is a moment we got to push back on this. And I think that Judge Jackson's confirmation, which I'm hoping will come soon, will not only be a major kind of statement about who we want to be and where we want to go, but also tell those who want to bring us backwards, that we're gonna persist. We're not giving up. We're not going to be intimidated. And I just, I'm so proud of her. I'm so grateful to President Biden, and but I will tell you, I can't even. I don't want to go in the same elevator as Lindsey Graham or Josh Hawley or Ted Cruz.
I guess the gist of this, I guess if there's a bright spot to look at in all of this, it lets the youth in this country today see sky's the limit for you guys. Like, you can be a Supreme Court justice one day. That's what it makes.
You could do it. I mean, and I actually spoke to a group of students from private school in my district this morning on Zoom, and so, well, what's your advice to all of us? I said, my advice to you is you are being given the privilege of a really wonderful education. You already went to college. You will have the privilege of getting a good college education. The question for you is, because you are so privileged, what are you going to do to change the world to make it better? And it has to be about more than I'm going to make a lot of money. I don't care if you make money or not. But what are you going to do with all this knowledge that you have been able to accumulate? How are you going to use this tool to make the world better? When I was a congressional aide for a congressman from Boston, a guy named Joe Moakley, I did a lot of work on human rights in El Salvador, and I get to be very close to the Jesuits at a university in El Salvador, the University of Central America, and I was raised a Catholic. I was kind of like, I'm not feeling it right now. These Jesuits help get me more enthusiastic about my faith, but help me think a little bit differently about like how I should focus my life. And what they said to me is, faith is about more than ritual; it's about action. Going to church 100 times a day. Hey, you don't do anything about it. You just go to church 100 times a day. You're not getting close to the heaven. You just taking up space.
Gates,
right. They also said to me that the focus of their university has to be an absolute dedication to the poor. The focus of government should be that too, to lift up those who don't have a voice or who are being left behind. And and I feel that way. I really do. The fact that we have to fight to get people to pay attention to hunger.
That's right.
It's like, shouldn't we all? Shouldn't a mission of government, of all of our faith organizations, of even business, shouldn't part of it be about how do we lift people up? And instead, we're struggling to get on somebody's radar screen. We've got to be talking about this. And so, this is a moment for us to try to change the way we approach things. The pandemic was horrible. Showed the disparities that exist in this country, but they were there before. I mean, the poverty, the church community not having good access to health care or transportation or food, that was there before the pandemic. And so when people say, "Man, I want to get back to normal," I'm like, I don't want to get back to normal. Normal wasn't good enough.
We have to be innovative.
Right. We want to come back stronger. I look at everything as an opportunity, even crappy things like a pandemic. This horrible thing we lived through, right? We can sit and dwell on how bad it was, and we can say, this is an opportunity to bounce back better.
Absolutely.
And that's what we need to do.
That's right. And as survivors, we do that every day. We move on from the past into the future. Congressman, one of the last things I wanted to say to you is that we have seen a real shift during COVID, like you said, with so many people that used to be in a position where they had it all. They had resources, they had
Right.
food. They had access to anything and everything that money could buy. And now some of those same people are experiencing homelessness, hunger here in America, and people are losing their minds. Like they really, really are losing their minds because they weren't prepared for the unknown. And COVID was definitely an unknown. None of us thought would ever hit us in this way. I want you to say in your words, like, what are the next steps for Americans right now that have survived? First of all, who have survived COVID. Secondly, what are the next steps that we can do in our communities to continue strengthening our communities and show, leadership and profound innovation to carry it through?
So I met a lot of these families during COVID who were doing fine, and then COVID came. They lost their jobs, and all of a sudden couldn't afford their mortgages and their car payments. I remember handing out bags of groceries in the community of Massachusetts, and cars were driving up to get the groceries, and I was looking at this car coming up, looked like a really nice car. The guy says to me when he pulls over, he says, "Congressman McGovern?" I said, "Yeah." He says, I bet you're wondering why I'm driving this nice car. And I said, "No, I'm not," but I was. Right? And he said, "Look, I mean, the floor fell out from beneath us with the pandemic. I mean, we're behind the mortgage payments. We're behind it. I mean, we were living paycheck to paycheck. My wife and I both lost our jobs. And so, yeah, we still have the car. But, that's about it. And we're afraid we're going to lose our home, and we need food to feed our kids. And, I keep on thinking of that guy all the time. And I'm hoping, that when he's back on his feet and everything, and his wife and him are both back in the workforce. But I'm also hoping that they will, that they will be an additional voice in this movement for, justice and economic justice, and making sure that nobody gets left behind. Look, one of the things I try to tell people all the time is that if we want to fix things, we got to be engaged. We have to understand that the systems that are in place, our government, for example, is the only game in town. Actually, if you want to change policy, to sit back and say they don't care, I get it. A lot of times they don't. Make them care. Show up in their office. Be in their face. Tell them that you work overtime to unelect them if they don't listen. Get them to take action. My friend, the late Congressman John Lewis, who I miss every day, I love him. But he always used to tell us that, the initial Voting Rights Act, it just didn't happen. It took a long time, and a lot of people protesting, getting arrested, lobbying their members of Congress. Giving speeches, doing rallies, but it moved the ball. If it wasn't for all that action, the ball would not have moved at all. And at a time when we were in danger of backsliding, this is a time for renewed activism. Not everybody has to run for Congress. If you want to run for Congress, run for Congress, right? But not everybody has to do that to make a difference. And the one thing every member of Congress and every senator has in common, they don't want to get reelected. So you show up at their door, and and you show up with 2 people, 5 people, maybe you show up with 10 people. That's a mini movement, right?
That's right.
Say, you know what? We're here to ask you to be on our side. And by the way, if you're not, then we can't be on your side.
That's right.
Sometimes people forget that we work for people, not the other way around. So I'm a big believer that that activism, engagement is really important. And in terms of innovative ideas, I'm learning every day when we talk about hunger and stuff. And when we were at when we first met at the food bank, whatever. There's innovative things happening there, right? And the coalitions like that. I learned about that from showing up there, but not everybody shows up there.
They got food trucks now,
right? Yeah, right, which is fabulous, right? But I think for members of Congress who think they know everything, we don't. You know, and I'm going to tell you something that's going to shock you, but intelligence is not a prerequisite for serving in Congress, right? So just so you know that. So people can learn.
That's right.
And if you know, and when I see success somewhere, when I see an effort that is combating hunger in a particular community that's working, well, I want to see that replicated. You know, and I want others to know about it. So you know, maybe they might join on, and we can see this thing grow. And whatever the issue is, I mean, but boy, you know, we need more democracy right now, not less. We need people I get it, people's lives are busy. People have 1,000 things on their plate, especially if you're struggling and wonder where your next meal is going to come from. The last thing you want to hear is talk to your congressperson or talk to your city councilor or talk to me. But, you know, find a way to plug in, because if you don't, then they have an excuse to say, you're invisible. I don't know you. I've never heard about you. You know, and I can ignore your issue. Too many people feel like they're invisible in this country. And that can change if they get in our face a little bit more. I said, John Lewis talked about everybody should be a troublemaker. Good trouble.
Good
I
trouble.
mean, we need more good troublemakers.
Surely did. Congressman, it was a pleasure.
I love this. Was great. Peace
was a
Coffee.
pleasure.
You know, I mean, this is wonderful.
And Peace Coffee is our sponsor for the Women's HQ Coffee Survivor Circle. And we want to award you some little trinkets from Pete's
I
Coffee.
love this.
Actually, Pete's Coffee is this selection of the anniversary blend for 2022 is actually 100% produced by women.
Wow.
So this is appropriate for today's podcast, and this year's blend are coffees from East Africa and Latin America. For every pound sold, $1 goes to the Women's Center for Entrepreneurship in Colombia.
Wonderful.
And this is all sponsored and partnered through Pete's Coffee.
Well, I think this is wonderful. By the way, I spent a lot of time in Colombia too, so I really appreciate the cause. But you know, this is an example of a business with a conscience. And you know what? I mean, if we had more businesses that said, you know, yeah, we want to make money, we want to be profitable, but you know, that doesn't mean we can't give some support to struggling causes that are good here in the United States and around the world. And thank you, by the way. I love you. Thank you for thanks for being part of our initiative on the Hunger Summit. Thanks for all that you do on the issue of domestic violence and helping people who feel particularly vulnerable. You know, you're an example of like not giving up and not content to sit back, and you know, you're a troublemaker. I like that. So, thank you for the comment.
I get good trouble though.
Yeah, good trouble.
It's good trouble.
Yeah, we want good troublemakers.
And I just wanted to let you know your friend Senator Cory Booker is now he's trying to book an episode here on
he will be much more eloquent and powerful. I mean, no, he is my. I mean, I love listening to him speak. He's like unbelievable. I mean, he is but he was with us when we announced that the initiative on the conference.
Yes, so,
he
was. And he's been very vocal lately. He's been busy with his little, media stuff.
And if you see him before me, or if I see him before you, I will tell him. I think we both agree he was magnificent during the Judge Jackson hearings. So,
yes, he was.
We love him. So,
yes, he was.
So this is great. Well, thank you, and
thank you, sir, for coming to our platform today. God bless you.
All right, we'll talk.
This is Kimberly Harris signing out from the first podcast, Women's HQ Survivor Coffee Circle. Thank you for joining us today.